Hello there. As you can see in the title, we are going to talk about a Disney princess today. But without all the Disney magic or revisionist history or really anything but the names. Yeah, you won't hear me break out into song in this episode. Always was more of a Don Bluth guy anyway. Our story begins in the late 16th century. When exactly is hard to say, for the Powhatan people did not really keep records of births. Still, it must have been an exciting day for Chief Wahansanakar, I'm sorry for butchering these names by the way, as a daughter was born. He would name her Matuaka, and if you're wondering why not Pocahontas, we will get to that. By all accounts, she was a healthy and spirited child that found great joy in exploring her surroundings and was quite athletic. According to some sources, she frequently practiced the wheel, spinning around on her hands and feet. Around the time, several European sailors, especially the Spanish and the British, had started exploring the coastline of eastern North America. Seeing the great wealth the Iberians extracted from the New World, the Scottish-born King James I of Great Britain and Ireland, yes, he would only use the title later, decided it was time for a permanent colony there for his people. So in 1706, Jamestown, named after the monarch, was founded. The arrival of the newcomers attracted the attention of the nearby natives, especially Matuaka, who wanted to show off her cartwheeling skills. The language barrier mattered little as she goaded colonist children into wheeling competitions. Apparently, she was also completely naked while doing so. Thanks for that detail, 17th century historians. The colonists asked the Powhatan people who this child was and were told she is Pocahontas. According to our sources, this meant something like playful one. Apparently her father was adamant about only this nickname being given for a fear that revealing her true name would give the foreigners power over his child. It is unconfirmed if the Powhatan truly held such beliefs, but a public and private name appear frequently enough in their culture. For example, Matuaka also had another public name among the natives, which was Amonut. Later, she even took up yet another name. For now, let's just stick to Pocahontas to make my life easier. Among the settlers in Jamestown was a man with the astonishingly generic white guy name John Smith. He did some exploration but got captured by a Powhatan hunting party. There he met Pocahontas' father, the chief. They negotiated his release, during which it became clear the natives hoped to keep the colonists contained and under political control. In Smith's first record of this, he never mentioned the presence of Pocahontas. It is only in a later recounting that he claimed she vouched for him, even at risk of getting beaten to death herself, just to spare him an execution. Despite this very relevant event missing from the earlier account, it also doesn't make too much sense. The natives would just execute a highly valuable political prisoner, so I think it's fair to doubt this story. On the contrary, embellishing this story, making the savage Pocahontas a self-sacrificial hero, makes sense as a very calculated move on Smith's part. That said, some researchers suggested the story is true, only misinterpreted by Smith, as the motion to execute him might have been a ritualistic act and the young woman's intervention might have equally been a planned part of such a ritual. Either way, after getting injured in a gunpowder explosion, Smith returned to England, leaving the natives to believe he was dead. Relations cooled in his absence until they eventually broke down into a full-blown war. It is worth noting that the Powhatan were hegemons of the tribes in the region, and some liked to take the opportunity to ally with the colonists against their overlords. It was with the help of the Patawomek tribe that the colonists managed to capture Pocahontas and take her as a hostage to the English settlement Henricus. There are diverse accounts about her treatment in the situation, but the most plausible suggests that she was indeed treated well as a political hostage. What we can say for sure is that she was taught about Christianity during her captivity and eventually agreed to be baptized. which leads us to yet another name, for she took up the Christian name Rebecca. I will still continue to call her Pocahontas, I hope she won't mind. According to native oral tradition, she also married her first husband, Pocum, again, sorry for the pronunciation, during this time and even had a daughter with him. As the man was supposedly a high-ranking Patawomic warrior, it is plausible as a political marriage. It is however unconfirmed by English sources. In the year 1614, negotiations between the colonists and the Powhatan people started, for which Pocahontas was present. The sources say she lamented that the war was more important to her family than her well-being. She alluded to her hostage status and claimed the colonists loved her more than her own kin. Again, this is likely dramatized. In the same year, she also met John Rolfe. No, I said John, not James. Yes, that one. John was a colonist who lost both his wife and daughter on the perilous journey across the ocean, and it was Pocahontas who rekindled his will to live again. While initially apprehensive about engaging with a heathen, her conversion to Christianity and his desire to save her eternal soul led to their marriage. This one's definitely confirmed. The marriage was, however, controversial at the time and, interestingly, not because of Pocahontas' pagan background. No, people took more offense to a commoner like Rolfe marrying a native princess, which is ironic as no such status existed in Powhatan culture. A chief's daughter was not worth more than any other member of the tribe. However, for the Powhatan people, this marriage and subsequent birth of a child supposedly profoundly changed things, and they agreed to a peace deal with the colonists. Since it was a common belief that this marriage caused the change in stances, it is sometimes called the Peace of Pocahontas. Back in London, the news about this made big waves, and eventually Pocahontas and John were invited to England to tell their story. This is also the time in which Smith's second recount of his capture by the Powhatan was written. Pocahontas was more than a native princess, she was a symbol now. A symbol that the wild lands and people of America could be tamed, could be civilized. She was living proof that it was worth investing into colonization efforts. She was proof that the savage heathens could become moral Christian citizens. The framing of Smith's retelling of his capture is very clear. As such, Pocahontas and the 11 fellow Powhatans with which she traveled became frequent guests of England's high society. Everyone was fascinated by the native princess, including King James. Amusingly, Pocahontas didn't even know she was talking to a man of high status during their meeting and only realized when it was explained to her in hindsight. Furthermore, she had an awkward reunion with Smith, who she thought was dead. When they did meet, she respectfully addressed him as father, as it was custom in her culture. Smith, in turn, was uncomfortable with this, as in his eyes, Pocahontas was the daughter of a king and he a mere commoner. This confrontation shows once again that Pocahontas had little interest in adhering to foreign European hierarchical concepts she was forced into. Unfortunately, Pocahontas caught some illness on her way back home. She just managed to reach her native shores before she succumbed to whatever ailed her. Her last words expressed gratitude that her husband and son would live on. She merely reached the age of 21. Nonetheless, her cultural impact was huge, as she taught the European colonizers that natives were human too. A lesson that was tragically not learned by all. The darker side of her story is the new narrative of obedient native wives and the attempts to tame the natives either by force or intermixing. And Pocahontas was the unwitting poster child for it. And it gave us a mid-Disney movie. There, I said it, the movie was mid. Feels great to get that off my chest. Well, if you want to leave your own thoughts on Pocahontas, be it the person or the film, please comment. We'd also appreciate a like and a sub if you haven't yet. Thanks to my wonderful artist and to you viewers. Bye! Yeah, so that movie, instead of like showing us actual native culture, it just this weird magical native that you see in Hollywood movies. Yeah, it sucks. I'm sorry, but it sucks.